Hello and welcome to KISS Math. In our last video we covered PEMDAS, which tells us what order we need to do our operations in. However, within these operations, such as adding or dividing, you may have wondered if it matters what order the numbers go in. For example, is 3 plus 4 the same as 4 plus 3? Or is 3 divided by 4, is that the same as 4 divided by 3? That is what the commutative and associative properties tell us. Now, the names don't really matter that much, but you just have to know the rules. Let's do the commutative property first. So think of the word commute. It means going back and forth between two places. But whether you're coming or going, the distance is the same. It's kind of the same concept with numbers. Sometimes you can move around the numbers but still get the same answer. Now this works for adding and multiplying, but not subtracting and dividing. Let me show you here. So if we have 3 plus a negative 4 plus 5, if we calculate this, we would get the 3 plus a negative 4 is negative 1, plus 5 is 4. And to be clear, I'm not subtracting anything. You see a negative sign here, but this is a negative 4, right? I'm adding a negative 4 to this 3. Okay, so since we said that adding is commutative, we can shuffle the numbers around and write this equation in a couple of different ways. So we could say 5 plus a negative 4 plus 3. You can see this 5 here is this 5 over here. I moved it to the front. This 3 is this 3 over here. I moved it to the back. And here's a negative 4. This one is going to stay in place. And if I calculate this new equation, this would be 5 plus a negative 4, which is 1, plus 3 is 4. I could also move this 4 to the front, or this negative 4 I should say. Move this 5 to the middle and keep the 3 there. And if I calculate that, that would be negative 4 plus 5 is 1, plus 3 is 4. They all give us the same answer. All right, how about multiplication? So we have negative 2 times 3 times a negative 4. If we were to solve this, this would be a negative 6 times negative 4 is 24. And we also said that multiplication is commutative. So again, I could swap around these numbers in any order and I should get the same answer. So let's do 3 times a negative 2 times a negative 4. This would be 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 times negative 4 is a positive 24. Let's bring this negative 4 to the front. Times 3 times a negative 2. And this would be negative 4 times 3 is negative 12 times the negative 2 is positive 24 again. Well, we said the commutative property doesn't work for subtracting, so we should get a different answer if we move the numbers around. So instead of 4 minus 3, we did 3 minus 4, we would get a negative 1, which indeed is a different answer than 1. Division also does not work with the commutative property. If we have 8 divided by 4, which is 2, and if we swap that around and say 4 divided by 8, we would get 0.5 or 1/2, which is not the same as 2. So here's an example that has multiplication and division. So 4 divided by 2 times a negative 3. So if we evaluate this, 4 divided by 2 is 2, times negative 3 is negative 6. So we can move around the numbers that are being multiplied, no problem, but we cannot change what is being divided. So for example, I can move this -3 up front and multiply it by this 4 and then divide by 2. That would get me -12 divided by 2, which is -6. I could also move this -3 to the middle. If I do 4 times the -3 divided by 2, that would also give me -6. What I cannot do is swap what is being divided. So instead of 4 divided by 2, if I did 2 divided by 4 times the -3, this would give me 2 divided by 4 is 0.5 multiplied by a -3 equals -1.5. And this is a different answer than the 6 that we were getting up here because we changed what we're dividing by. In other words, we were trying to use this commutative property when dividing, which doesn't work. The associative property tells us if we can move around the numbers even if they are grouped into parentheses. Remember from our PEMDAS video that anything in the parentheses needs to be done first before anything else. So here's our original example for addition. Okay, so let me delete this because this is all for the commutative property. If instead we had 3 plus parentheses -4 plus 5, we would still get -4 plus 5, which is 1. We did this first because it's in parentheses. Then plus 3 is 4. Now, what if the parentheses were in a different spot? So let's say we had 3 plus -4 in parentheses like this, and then a plus 5. So here we would have to evaluate this piece first. So 3 plus a -4, that's a -1, plus 5, and we still get our 4. So the associative property tells us that no matter where the parentheses are, we can swap that around and we would always get the same answer. This works for addition and multiplication, but not for subtraction or division. Here's our original example for multiplication. If I put parentheses around this guy here, we would have to do this piece first, right? So -2 times 3, that's a -6, times a -4 is 24. So that's fine. And if we have -2 times, let's say 3 times -4, but we put a parentheses around here, this tells us we would have to do this operation first. So 3 times -4, that's a -12, times a -2, and we still get our positive 24. So it doesn't matter where the parentheses are for multiplication, you'll always get the same answer, and that's the associative property. And again, subtraction and division are always the ones that give us problems. And so it's only fitting that the associative property does not work with them. So let's look at 4 minus parentheses 2 minus 4. If we evaluate the parentheses first, we would get 2 minus 4, which is a -2. So we would have 4 minus a -2. We know subtracting a negative number is the same as adding that number, so we get a 6. Now instead, if we had 4 minus 2 in parentheses, then a -4, we would have 4 minus 2 is 2, minus 4, that would be a -2. So you can see, because we changed where the parentheses were, that changed our answer from 6 to -2, which is why this associative property does not work for subtraction. And lastly, for division, if we had something like 24 divided by 4 divided by 2. This would be 24 divided by 4 is 6. Divided by 2 would be 3. Now if the parentheses were over here, so 24 divided by parentheses 4 divided by 2, this would be the same as 24 divided by 4 divided by 2 is 2, and so we would get 12, which is a different answer than 3. So here are all the rules that are listed here in a summary for both the commutative and the associative properties. And the ones I'm circling here, these are for addition and multiplication. And if you notice, you can pretty much change the order of the numbers, you can change the order of the parentheses, and you'll get the same answer. But for subtraction and division, you have to be a little bit careful. It's important to know what you're subtracting and what you're dividing by, because you will get different results if you change the order. Now we're almost at the end of our basics section. There is one last property called the distributive property, which I'll cover in the next video linked below.